let's get into chapter 14. I wanted to present chapter 14 for you guys because this will help you with your speeches next time. You know, I understand that, you know, obviously you're supposed to be reading it at home, and I know that you looked at it, but let me dig deeper into this chapter and try to explain some of the ideas, perhaps using even the example of the speech that you were giving today. So since you were giving an example, a speech on global warming and climate change, maybe we'll use some of those ideas that you threw around today and see how they actually work as an argument, okay? Because chapter 14 is all about making arguments and persuading people. So critical thinking, this is what it's about. All right. The reason why this chapter is so important is because if you can argue your point, whether it is a speech or a paper, it doesn't matter. People are either going to accept or reject what you have to say. You can argue your point all you want, but if people don't accept what you argue, then you miss the spot, right? And do you want to succeed when you argue? Of course you want to succeed. If you come to your professor and say, no, you gave me a B, but I really deserve an A. Okay, good. Give me some reasons why. And if you give me good enough reasons why, I'll say, you know what, maybe you have a point. Maybe I'll reconsider my opinion. Maybe you do deserve it, you know, but you have to give me some reasons. If you don't give me any reasons, or your reasons are lame, like, why should I give you an A? Well, because I want to. Well, that's not a good enough reason. See, so you're going to make an argument for things in life all the time. You want, you know, you come to your boss and I want a raise. Well, why do you want a raise? Well, because this is what I did, and I did this, and I did this, and I did that. Remember, I saved you money on this, and I saved you money on that. Oh, okay, yeah, you know what? Maybe you deserve a raise. Nobody else did that. Good, I'll reward you. Things in life happen all the time. We have to argue, and you have to present evidence all the time. So what is arguing? What is argumentation? That's what this whole chapter is about. And this is how the professors who write this book define it. They say on page 234, argumentation is a process of advancing claims supported by good reasons and evidence. Argumentation is a process of advancing claims supported by good reasons and evidence. So if you're going to claim something, you better have good reasons and evidence to back it up. Otherwise, your claim is empty. It doesn't have any substance to it. No weight. And I'll have to accept your argument. Okay? It's not just about offering opinion or offering information. See, giving people what you think is not an argument. That's what you think. Giving information of facts is not an argument. Interpreting those facts to have a particular meaning is an argument. Okay? There's two words that I want you to know from this chapter that they're both very, very important for this entire chapter. And you'll see them, you know, the reason why I want you to know them because, well, they'll be on the test, okay? Argumentation and persuasion. These are two different things. So what is the difference? Persuasion and argumentation. I'm still right there on the top paragraph of page 234, if you're following me with a textbook. Persuasion and argumentation. So persuasion is something you do by the use of emotion. It's a common sense argument that you base on emotion of a person. Argumentation, you do that through reasoning and through facts mostly. So if I'm going to appeal to your common sense or to your sense of self-preservation, let's put it that way, I can talk about drinking dirty water or breathing dirty air and you're going to say, I don't want to do that. But you see, that's emotional. Because right now you're not breathing dirty air or drinking dirty water, so you're okay with it. But looking into the future, all of a sudden you say, I don't want to do that. So that creates an emotional response. You say, that's not nice, right? But arguing, I am persuading you to hear me out, essentially. But now I have to make an argument of why you should make changes in your life to make sure that doesn't happen. And those arguments will have to be organized around evidence. Otherwise, you're not going to go for it. So there's two ways of approaching a speech where you're persuading somebody. There's persuasion and there's argumentation. Kind of two sides, two techniques, two left hand, right hand kind of an idea. You can use both in a speech. You can use them in balance with each other. It's just that keep in mind that they're a little bit different. And depending on how you decide to build your speech, you might lean heavily on one and less on the other. Okay? But whenever somebody makes a claim or an argument or ask for something or tell you to do something, you're not going to just accept it automatically. You're going to consider it. You're going to think about it, right? And so if they're reasonable, if they're compelling, then you go for it. So now look with me on page 234, just a little bit lower. Rational thinking and talking, the argumentation. This is where the authors of this book explain what argument consists of. And the argument basically, it consists of three essential parts, they say. Again, this is crucially important. You're definitely going to see this on a test, okay? So the first part of your argument is claim, okay? What is it that you want to state? This is your central idea, remember? If you don't have a claim, if you don't have a central idea, I don't even know what you're talking about. Second is relevant evidence that you want to support your claim with, okay? I say global warming is real, and this is my evidence, okay? And then all of a sudden, you sound believable. And the third is the reasoning pattern, where you're going to connect the evidence with your claim. So, claim, evidence, and then reasoning. Those are three parts of an argument that have to be there. By the way, look at the next page, 235, and there's a little bit of a little chart here for you where you can see the claim sits on top of the reasoning and it's supported by evidence. And there's not just one piece of evidence, it could be multiple pieces of evidence. But the point is, a claim that is unsupported by evidence and has no reasoning will not be accepted or heard or believed. So it doesn't matter how good your claim is, it simply is not going to be believed. All right, so these are necessary parts of any type of an argument. And if you're going to speak to persuade people, you're going to have to make an argument, make a claim and make an argument. And you have to offer this reasoning. Now, there are different types of claims. If I'm going to make a claim about something, there are different varieties of claims. You can make a claim of fact, you can make a claim of value, or you can make a claim of policy. These are the three different types. What are the differences? The claim of fact basically says that something is or is not. For example, climate change is real or it is not real. You see, that's a claim. So if I say it's not real, then I have to prove it to you. If you say it's real, then you have to prove it to me, right? Either one of us that makes a claim has to prove our claim. So how would you prove your claim? You would present evidence, right? You'd say, look at the temperature. And then you work through your reasoning. Therefore, climate change is real. So that's the idea. So one is the claim of fact. But in this claim of fact, there's some components that you have to consider. And here's what the authors highlight. Number one, how can the truth or accuracy of the claim be measured? How can you know that what you're claiming as a fact can be proven to be a fact or not a fact? Okay? What if I told you that last year in this class I had 7 students and 1 alligator? An alligator graduated with an A. How would you just prove that? How would you measure that? First of all, you're going to say, well, I know Professor is an honest guy, he doesn't usually lie, but he might be joking. So you start working through possible things like what does not, if it doesn't line up, why does it line up? How can I measure that statement? Is he serious? Is he joking? You're trying to think of what are the possibilities. My claim doesn't sound just right. Something is wrong with it.
So the second one is, do the facts of the situation fit the criteria? Sometimes I may present to you the facts, okay, but they does not have an appropriate criteria. How do I measure the facts? Well, right now you're measuring the facts that my claim of having an alligator in my class is true based on the fact that you know me to be a trustworthy and an honest guy. So if you say, my professor is pretty trustworthy and honest guy, if he says he had an alligator in his class, he must have. Okay? You just kind of have to go by what you have, right? But what is the criteria? Well, there's another criteria. Why don't you go look at the enrollment record? You can go to the dean and say, hey, excuse me, can I look up an enrollment record for last year's class? And you're going to say, no alligator, he was lying. See, what did you just do? You just figured out another way to verify my claim. I made a claim, and you say, no, it's not true. He's lying, he's joking, he's telling me something that's not actual, not real. So you established a way to figure out the accuracy of my claim. Meaning, you looked for evidence that proves the opposite. And you found it. And all of a sudden, I can't claim that anymore, okay? So claims of fact, yes, just because you say it's a fact doesn't mean it's a fact, because the fact can be inaccurate, it can be audacious, it can be absolutely wrong. Serious. I could say I had 45 students in this class last semester, and that would be wrong. You could look it up and say, no, there wasn't 45 students in your class. So just because somebody makes a claim doesn't make that claim true. You could still look it up and work through the issues. Now, that's a claim of fact. When I say something is or is not, something was or was not, something happened or didn't happen, that's just reality, right? The second one is claim of value. When I say value, I don't mean price. I mean something is good or something is bad. For example, if I say recycling is good, right? I make it a value statement. I'm not saying that you're a good person just because you recycle. Recycling is good. The practice of recycling is good. What if I said every person who recycles is a good person? See, I can't prove that. Because guess what? Murderers recycle too. But if I'm going to say you're a good person, I better be able to prove that. Well, maybe you're a bad person in every way possible except you recycle. Maybe you torture animals and mean to children and old people and just steal money, but you recycle. So I can't say people who recycle are good, but I could say recycling is good. See? So statement of value is when you evaluate something. It could be a person, it could be a behavior, it could be a practice, it could be a policy, it could be anything. When you say, that's good, that's bad. Okay? Now, but the questions you must ask when you're making that claim, when you say something is good or something is bad, by what standards is something judged? Who sets the standard? Who says what is good and who says what is bad? Okay? So if I find a person who does something in their behavior that's objectionable, let's say they steal, okay? If I say, that person is a thief, he's bad. Well, based on what criteria am I determining that he's bad? What is my standard by which I measure? Who says that stealing is bad? Maybe we all should steal. Maybe it's not bad at all. We just go around and steal each other's stuff all the time, right? How is that bad? I can make an argument that it's not bad at all, but if I am going to say that stealing is bad, then I'm going to have to use criteria. Which criteria? Well, guess what? It's against the law. All right, if that's my criteria, that's what it is. Or I could say it's against the Bible, because the Bible says you shall not steal. Whatever criteria you want to use, that's a criteria. But is that, 100% acceptable by all? Is that true? Is it really actual? So how well is your criteria hold up? So how well does the item question measure up to the standards specified? And so when you say something, I like Apple computers because they're good. Well, that's a statement that I'm basically saying these computers are good because that's what I like, but that's not a proof that they're good because I like them. And I'm going to have to say, well, why are they good? Well, because they're durable, because they last long, because they have good processors, because because they have aluminum casing. I can come up with good reasons why, right? But me just saying, Apple computers are good, another person can say, no, they're not. They're priced twice as much as everything else. PCs, are much better than Apple's. Why? Because they have the price. Yeah, you have a point. So you see, now you are arguing against me, and I have to come up with that reason, to explain to you why, one is better than the other. So that's your claim of value when you're saying something good or bad. Another claim is policy. Policy, basically, you're saying we should do this or we should do that. So when you're doing your speech on global warming or climate change, you're saying we should recycle, we should do this, we should do that. You're suggesting something that should be done about a problem, okay? And the question about that is, well, good. Is there a need for such policy or course of action? Well, in case of global warming, of course there's a need. Assuming that you prove to me that it's real. Assuming that you prove to me it actually is changing our environment, okay? Is the proposal practical? And this is where most proposals for climate change break down, by the way. And by the way, let me tell you guys, you got to understand this about me. I'm kind of an environmentalist. I believe in recycling. I believe in green earth and energy. I tell you, I'm one of those crazy people that does stuff. I raise bees. Okay, I raise honeybees. I have tons of trees on my properties. I plant trees every single year. Cultivate new plants all the time. I live in a neighborhood that has a conservation zone of 100 acres. I'm an environmentalist, these things. But you know what? When I hear all these arguments against global warming and climate change, the reason why I think none of them stack up is because everything that I'm doing is undone by millions of people who do not do it. And they never will do it. They will never live the lifestyle that I live. That's a lifestyle that I choose. That's what I do because I believe in it. I don't do it for any other reason except that I think it's right, for me personally. But I know that other people are not going to turn off their lights. I know that other people are going to run their car, whether they're going places or not. They're not going to switch to hybrid vehicles or do anything like that. They're not going to buy a smaller car. They're going to buy the biggest car they possibly can. Why? Because that's what they like. Because they want the roar of the engine. Because they want to pass somebody on the highway. Things like that. I know it. So, like, for example, you take this argument in global warming. Is there a need? Yes. Do we need to do something about it? Absolutely. Is the proposal practical? Most of what people propose, if we just all recycle, everything's going to be great. Nope. Because it's not practical. You see, this is where the argument falls apart. Because you know what? Most people in this world will not recycle. They will not. I will tell you this now. Most countries in this world will not stop polluting. They will not. They will spew dirty water into their rivers. They will kill their people before they will stop. They will not stop. Most countries. Some countries will. Other countries will not. So everything that I do, and then there's millions of people like me, will be outdone by billions of people who are not like me. So guess what? All the good that I've done is flushed away by billions of people who will not. By billions of people who will do very environmentally unfriendly things every day, all day long for the rest of their life. There's a lot more of them than me. So guess what? All of that, do this, do that, save the world, is great. Except it's not going to make a difference. It's depressing, but that's why I'm a kind of an environmentalist that's a little bit different. You probably never met an environmentalist like me. I actually believe that we do cause some of the climate changes that we do, but I don't believe that we can reverse them or change them. I don't. I don't think we can. Not as human beings, not as long as we're free. The only way we can change it is if we have one world government and we make everybody do the same thing, which is impossible. So as long as we have free countries and they are free to do what they want, we will not all unify and change it. It's not going to happen because we're human beings and we don't care about anybody else except ourselves. And that's what's going to happen. We're going to do what we feel is good for us. So that's why most of these arguments that presented as claims to do this and to do that for global warming, they're not practical. Every solution that I've heard for reducing climate change or global warming, not practical. Have not heard one practical one. What I mean by not practical, it can't be done. They're great ideas, except they will not work. So, are the benefits of the proposal greater than the disadvantages? Or here's the idea. This is another argument that people make against climate change, global warming. If we do this, are the benefits outweigh? Well, this is a practical argument now. All of a sudden, it's not about emotion, it's not about dirty water, dirty air. It's this, if I change my life this much, will it help? And the answer most of the time is no. Because it will only help if everyone changes their life, and that's not going to happen. So if I change my life, I put myself at a disadvantage, and the rest of the people are now going to be succeeding and advancing way beyond me. So what did I do in the end? I only hurt myself. I didn't help the world. No, maybe a tiny little bit for a microsecond. That's it. That's the end of it. So what happens? That argument falls apart. Are the benefits greater than disadvantages? No. If we're going to talk about benefits, actual benefits, no, they're not greater. If everyone got along and they all did it at the same time, yes. But that's not going to happen. So no. Is the proposal superior to alternatives? I haven't heard an alternative that's better. So maybe there are some alternative arguments, and I keep hoping that somebody in the bright thinkers of the world will come up with a way to solve our ecological problems. But at this point, the only solutions I hear are the ones that will not work. One country reducing emissions is not going to save the world. 20 countries reducing emissions is not going to save the world. Only going to happen if all the countries reduce emissions. And that's not going to happen because we can't control the whole world. Even if 100 countries get together, it still will not happen. It will help. But the likelihood of getting 100 countries to do anything together hasn't been done in history since the beginning of mankind. And I'm not very optimistic that we'll get done because I know something about people, and people only care about themselves. That's the truth. It's cynical, but it's true. So you see, this is what you do with an argument. You have an argument, and you take it apart, and you ask these questions about it. So even though the argument may be good and sound and valid, guess what? I'm not buying it. I'm not accepting it. Why? Because I ask questions of that argument and the argument starts to fall apart. So even though I accept the idea that, hey, recycling is great, hey, reducing, to lights from regular halogen bulbs to LEDs is great. I agree with it. In the end, I realize that it's not going to make a big change. So that's how you take apart an argument. That's the whole idea of when you make an argument, consider these questions and build them into your thinking so you don't make an argument that can be debunked that easily, taken apart that simply. Because otherwise, you're making an argument that is already defeated by the moment you made it. You see? So when should you make a claim? At which point of the speech should you make a claim? The authors of this book say that you should do it on the forward end, as early as you can in your speech. Why? Because if you're speaking for something and you're making a claim, you want your audience to know what it is that you're trying to say. And your claim is your central idea. So you say it on the front of the speech as early as you can. Then as you've made your claim and you've considered how feasible your claim is, you start working on the evidence. Okay? So what types of evidence are there? Well, there are basically several different types of supporting evidence that you can offer for a speech. One of them right here, you can see they're broken down into major categories. First one, this is, I'm looking over page 237, by the way, if you want to follow along with me. One of them is rationally relevant evidence, and the other one is motivationally relevant evidence. So rationally relevant evidence has to do with an argument. Remember what I told you about argumentation. Argumentation is when you argue with facts. Facts are facts. Temperature's rising. That's a fact. Can't fake it, can't change it. Either it did or it didn't. Okay? We have more tornadoes. Either it happened or it didn't happen. These are facts. I can't deny them. All right? So rationally relevant evidence. Some evidence is not relevant. Okay? Some evidence is simply not relevant. So when I get up and start talking about, polar bears, doing something, most of us do not care. You know why? Because it's rationally irrelevant to us. How many of you have ever met a polar bear except in a zoo? You haven't. If you don't see one for the rest of your life, will your life be terrible? No. You see the point? It makes no sense. I can make that argument and it makes no sense to you. Why? Because it doesn't touch your life. You don't care if you never see a polar bear in your life. You don't care if a polar bear runs out of their food source. But what happens if I talk about issues that rationally do matter to you? For example, somebody a long time ago brought a very interesting species of plant to this state, to the city of Atlanta. It's called kudzu. Kudzu is not native to this area. Right now, it's taken over everything. Every green space is taken over by kudzu. And kudzu grows prolifically here, and you can't kill it. It just grows everywhere. It's taken over. It's not a species that's supposed to be around here. It's not native to Georgia, but it's taken over, and it's killing a lot of other plants. Is that changing our ecology? Absolutely it's changing our ecology. And we did do it. Who did it? I don't know, but somebody did it. So is that relevant? Way more relevant than polar bears. You know why? Because if you have property and you have a backyard, you probably have some kudzu over there trying to encroach on it. And all of a sudden, that's a more relevant argument. So rationally relevant arguments is one type of evidence. Remember, the key is it has to be relevant. If it's not relevant enough, your audience is not going to care. Motivationally relevant arguments evidence has to do with persuasion. And remember, persuasion is more along the line of an emotional appeal. Okay? I am not arguing facts. I am persuading you based on visualizations of reality. Okay? So the questions that authors ask is, what type of evidence will this audience demand? You got to think about your evidence as you think about your audience. What audience do I speak to? What audience? What type of evidence they want? Not what audience in somewhere else will want, but what does this group want? What type of evidence they would find convincing? What specific evidence will generate best response? So let's say I have 25 different things that I want to cite as evidence, but I can't do that in a 5-minute speech. So what am I going to do? I'm going to choose 2 or 3 the best. I'm going to take my best of the best, and I'm going to use them as my evidence. Even though I have other evidence, I'm not going to use it. Why? Because it's not as good as this. All right, and that's the idea. So you have the persuasive arguing. You have the persuasion as a form of argumentation, as a form of persuasion, as a form of advancing your claim, and you have argumentation, and you have rational evidence and motivational evidence. Motivational evidence has to do again with your emotions. Remember, we're talking about motivational appeals, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, these kinds of things. When I appeal to things that scare you, you feel insecure, that's an emotion. I'm appealing to your emotion. When I tell you about drinking dirty water, that's an emotional response, okay? Rational response is a different type of response. So that's kind of to summarize what we're talking about. Now, what are the forms of reasoning that the authors are mentioning in this chapter? There's several types of reasoning. It's not as simple as to just say, okay, here's my claim, here are my facts. I'm done. No, you actually have to connect the facts and the claim together. You have to interpret them. You have to help your listener understand how the facts mean something. And that is reasoning. Okay? So there are several types of reasoning out there. Let's see, there are five major types presented in this chapter. And I don't really even want you to think or focus more beyond these, okay? Because some of these are even less common. So first one is reasoning from example, second is reasoning from generalization, third one from sign, fourth is from parallel case, and fifth is from cause. That's plenty right there. The most popular two types of reasonings are the first two types. Okay, most people will reason from first two types. The reasoning from examples is what we call sometimes inductive reasoning. And that's basically when you take a number of examples or number of occurrences, certain things that have happened or certain things that are happening now, and you use them as an evidence to now conclude with your claim, which is your general idea, which is your specific idea that you're trying to foster. Okay? So, are you familiar with reasoning from examples? Yesterday I ate this, today I ate this. And yesterday I was sick, and today I was sick. So guess what? Whatever I ate, maybe I should stop eating it. That's reasoning from examples. I use an example of one day, example of another day, and saying both days I've been sick. Well, maybe I should stop eating that item. But then you have to examine my claim. I was sick. Well, maybe I'm sick from something else. Maybe it's not the food that's making me sick, right? But you can still see the idea. The reasoning is still valid, even if if my foundation is flawed. Okay? So reasoning from specific examples and then coming up with a conclusion. You got your evidence, and then you generalize conclusion based on that evidence. Reasoning from generalization is the opposite of that.